Hey guys, Paul here. So today we're going to be talking about all the text in Yu-Gi-Oh cards because there's a lot of it. And this is not, anything new. It's not a mystery. There's just a lot of text in Yu-Gi-Oh cards, a lot to read, all that stuff. There's memes and jokes about it. But I wanted to discuss it and also share some examples of how I think that it could be improved in a realistic, practical way. And I'll sort of have some cards and examples and all that stuff. So first of all, I think that there is this joke about like Yu-Gi-Oh players don't know how to read or Yu-Gi-Oh players don't read their cards. And yeah, I mean maybe that's somewhat true, but I actually think that a more accurate assessment of that would probably be that Yu-Gi-Oh cards are hard to read thoroughly when you're playing the game. Um and then I think that's like a fair assessment, right? Like yeah, you should be like reading the cards in your own deck and kind of know what they do and like read them closely, all that stuff. But when it comes to like playing in a tournament setting and you're playing against your opponent's stuff for like the first time or it's something you're not super familiar with, it takes a lot of time to read these cards when like time is ticking in the rounds. And we already know there's like issues with the whole like time policies and stuff. It's another video for another day. But so I think that like Yu-Gi-Oh players, I'll give people some credit. Like it's hard to read cards, just for the first time in the middle of a round and like parse all the information. So while yes, it sucks that like cards have to have like 50 million different effects, I actually think that it's not so much that the cards have too many effects, but rather that the density of the text and just the visual processing of it is really difficult. So I thought that I would share this fun graphic that I found. Somebody made this on Reddit. This is the average word count of Yu-Gi-Oh card text by year. I don't know the specifics of exactly like what they were counting as word text. I don't know if vanilla is counting here. I don't know if this is like just cards released that year or whatever. But I thought it was kind of fun. You can clearly see how this has gone up pretty significantly. If we zoom in a little bit, you can see like by year it even shows the card that like released that year that had the most text or whatever. There's Endymion. I'm sure there he is right there. So yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh! Card text took a pretty big spike in like 2013 to 2014. I think was the big increase that I've noticed here. And yeah, there's a lot of it. Okay, so now let's actually get into the cards that I think are obnoxious to read. And don't worry, I'm not just going to be memeing on this card today. I have some solutions that came to mind for me. So this is Endymion, the Mighty Master of Magic. As you guys know, it's a pendulum card, so that does not help its case because there's two text boxes of things to read. But I think what happens to me when I look at a card like this is that there's so much text that I kind of just zone out. And I feel like this happens to a lot of players. They don't want to read it because it's just too much to read. And a big thing here is that a lot of these effects sort of run together. So this guy has like multiple effects, right? But the thing is, because of the way that they're written, and there's a few other cards I'm going to show like this, it feels like it's just all one jarbled amount of text. So another example, Cyber's Clock Dragon. I can zoom in a little bit, but you can already see from here, there's a lot of card text, right? How many lines? Like 6 full lines of text, and they had to like shrink it a little bit for this card. Um, when it's fusion summoned, you can do this certain thing equal to the link rating of a certain thing, and if you do, then a certain thing happens, and he gains attack for a certain thing, and then while you control a link monster, this other thing can't happen, and then if this card goes to the grave, you can get another thing. So this is a lot, right? Like this is wild. And then my final example is Ancient Warriors Rebellious Lu Feng, who he has also got quite a lot of card text. Let me zoom out a little bit. Yeah, so this can kind of just give you a gist of just how much this is. Now imagine picking this card up for the first time in a tournament and reading it. It's just a lot to see. His art's really cool though. But yeah, it's just a lot. Now, here's my first solution. Before I say it though, I will say this. Okay. Um with revising card text, it's obviously very difficult to reprint cards. Konami has problem solving card text already that they've implemented, and that isn't even really on every single card in the game yet. And they can't drastically change the way that like they format text. A lot of people want things like keywords and lots of symbols, and I don't unfortunately think that most of that is practical because of the way that cards have been printed up to now. To try to reprint a bunch of stuff with that and as well, like and teaching people these new symbols and what those mean would actually be just too hard to do. So here's where my solution comes in. Oh, and this is Eldritch. He's my last example. He's got a lot. He's actually the first one that I'm going to use my fix for. So this is something that the OCG does. They use these numbers 1 and 2, like these symbols. Now, I know I just said like, oh, well, symbols are hard to use. I think when people think of symbols, they think of like, oh, this is a symbol for a negation, or this is a symbol for like a, chain, like whatever. Like, I'm not really talking about like those sort of symbols. I think that what the OCG does is really smart here. They just have a 1 with a circle around it and a 2 with a circle around it. And what this helps with, you can see right there as well, what this helps with is, for me, it's visual organization. So when I see a card, I can just at least look and know, okay, that's where effect 1 starts, that's where effect 2 starts. I don't have to have it sort of like in this here, it just runs together. So Eldritch only has 2 effects. But the thing is, the second effect starts in the same, like, just paragraph with no formatting beyond that. So there's nothing to let me know that these are separate effects, so it all can kind of feel mentally like it's just garbled together. And if you are a person who has any amount of dyslexia, you'll probably know that this can make stuff really hard to, like, mentally separate and read quickly. Like, yeah, you can kind of like slow down and like read it just on your own time, but in a tournament, if you're facing Eldritch, you need to like double check an effect. It's kind of hard to find where it is. Another thing that we're going to get to as well is this last little sentence where like you can only use each effect of Eldritch the Golden Lord once per turn. I've got a thing for that, but yeah, so I like what the OCG does here. They also are allowed to do this first sentence, which I know you can't like read what this says, but basically it just says you can only use each of the 1 and 2 effects of this card once per turn. So it's kind of their version of this last sentence here. You can only use each effect of Eldritch the Golden Lord once per turn. I like this because it still reinforces the symbols. You can only use the 1 and 2 effect once per turn. Because that means that if there was an effect that like wasn't a hard once per turn, then they could just exclude it from this sentence. So like, you can only use the 1 and 2 effect once per turn, but if there's a 3 effect, then the 3 isn't counted in that. You can see this whenever they translate like OCG cards and there's like leaks and stuff. It comes up a lot. So yeah, just something I thought I would point out. I think this is really good. This would be a really good first step. I think you make this, you have the number, it's like circled. You can maybe make it bold as well. That would be really cool. And suddenly a lot of the cards that I was just showing become a little bit easier to parse. Not all of them, but like some of them. So like in the case of Endymion, if we just sort of look at it from a distance, you can already tell like 1, 2, 3, right? You can already sort of tell where these effects are located. So if you only need to like quickly find one of the effects, like your eyes can search through it faster. At least if you're like me and like you're kind of more of a visual reader. This lets me organize the card text a little bit easier in my head. It also is kind of funny because it shows there's really only one pendulum effect that this guy has. It just happens to be so gosh darn long that it's still kind of tough to read. But I still think this is nice because you know that because there's only a 1 symbol and there's no 2 or 3, I think people won't give up so quickly on these cards. Like I think what happens for a lot of people is they see this and it's like, oh, this is too much, I don't want to read it. But if you see that, okay, it's really all just one effect, maybe that helps a little bit. I'm not saying it's the perfect solution, but I'm saying it's something. Okay, another example is with Cyber's Clock Dragon. So he's got 3 different effects, but the fact that I can just see the 1, 2, and 3, hopefully this is like somewhat visible in video, I'm able to just more easily digest what's going on. Same with Ancient Warriors Liu Fang, 1 and 2, right? So even though he's got a lot with sort of how the summoning requirements work, at least I get to know, okay, there's only 2 effects. I think that I could better digest this compared to all of this. Now, I know this is like English and Japanese, so that's harder. It might be hard to wrap your brain around that quickly, but if you get what I'm saying, you get what I'm saying. All right. Now, the next thing that I think that they should start doing is what they do with cards like Lightning Storm. These bullet points, these would help so much stuff. They could even combine what I said before, where like, instead of having the 1, 2, and 3, you could just use these bullet points. Now, for a while, I kind of didn't understand like when and like why certain cards use these bullet points and why certain other ones didn't. But it's basically for cards that have an effect that you choose to activate. Like pick one of these to activate, or cards like Beat Cop that gain a specific effect under certain conditions. So like Gemini monsters also tend to have this. So this is great. Like if you are a visual reader like me, then I can like look at this and be like, okay, here are my 2 options. They're on different lines, so like the same effect does not like run on the same line here. And this bullet points just make it feel like a clean list. And I think this would help infinitely, infinitely, infinitely with just card readability. Now I know that they reserve it for like times when you have to like choose an effect here, but really if you were to add these like just larger bullet points to a card like, Endymion or Cyber's Clock Dragon and stuff like that, I feel like it'd be so much easier to at least know like how many effects a thing has and just more quickly find them. So this is something that I think would be a wonderful addition. I also had an example of like Raid Raptor Ultimate Falcon. He's another one of those cards where it's like if he has a certain material, he gains this effect. So that's where they typically will use these bullet points. But I think bullet points should be used for everything. Um, Another one I had is zoom out on this. Branded in red. It has its one effect, and then like you can apply the following effect. So they use the bullet point there. I think they should use bullet points way more. It would just be awesome. Now, the last thing that I wanted to talk about with card text is this. Where is it? Where's a good example of it? Eldritch, let's say. I kind of mentioned it earlier. This you can only use each effect of Eldritch the Golden Lord once per turn. So 90% of cards in Yu-Gi-Oh nowadays have this, and I find that it's very needlessly wordy. Because every single card's last sentence says you can only activate the effect of blah 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 card name once per turn. That would be the one place where I think it'd be nice if they could just find like a symbol or some sort of like indication that it's like a hard once instead of the just this extra sentence. I think when you start getting into cards that already have so gosh darn much that they're doing, starts to just really be rough. So maybe they could find something to do with that. And I think if you made those changes, we could drastically cut down on card text, or if nothing else, just make cards simpler to parse. My main thing being I like the bullet points. My secondary point being that if nothing else, I like the numbers with the circles around them. So yeah. All right, that's pretty much it. I think that's everything I wanted to cover with card text. Again, I know that it would be better to have like different symbols and like maybe, sort of like keywords, but that gets hard to do because there's so much reprinting to do. So if nothing else, what I'm suggesting could be a little easier to reprint without changing how cards are worded, and it would be easy to do going forward while not making the cards stick out too much from like what's come before. Okay, so I know that's not perfect, and I know that doesn't solve everything, but hopefully maybe you guys got a gist of what I'm talking about, and you can let me know, do you think that this would help at all, this would make improvements, or what other improvements would you make to card text in terms of just making it a little bit more legible? Now, I know the overall answer here is it'd be nice if monsters didn't have 50 different things that they did, but that's not happening, so, not anytime soon. So yeah, all right, that's going to be it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Best turn.